House floor a short time ago. Some of the top leaders engaged in a debate on this issue about whether further steps will be taken against Congressman Ilhan Omar.
I'd like to ask the gentleman, is there going to be any action taken, especially as it relates to the Foreign Affairs Committee, to remove the member that we're talking about?
You removed Mr. King from the committees after 10 years of comments.
Republicans have been pushing for the Congresswoman Ilhan Omar to be removed from the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Many of her colleagues were offended by her comments about support for Israel, suggesting they have dual loyalty and much of it is about money. But the resolution did not call Omar out by name, instead focused on being anti-hate.
I think the resolution actually was more powerful in how broad it was and how sweeping it was, because the reality is any form of hatred is unacceptable. And frankly, we as leaders of this nation should be condemning of all forms of hatred.
Omar, freshman Rashida Tlaib, and Andre Carson praised the measure as being historic, saying, quote, "It's the first time we have voted on a resolution condemning anti-Muslim bigotry in our nation's history. Anti-Muslim crimes have increased 99% from 2014 to 2016 and are still on the rise." The House Republican leader says the Speaker of the House and her leadership team dropped the ball on this issue.
The Democrats didn't even ask Congresswoman Omar to apologize. Their own members on the Democratic side, Elliott, their chairman, Chairman Ingle, he was frustrated that they had to add more to the resolution to even get it to come to the floor. That's what they spent the entire week on.
Leader Kevin McCarthy called it a watered-down amendment. Harris?
Mike Emanuel, thank you very much. You've set us up perfectly as we continue to report the story. Democrats are criticizing those 23 Republicans who voted against the anti-hate resolution. Here's Congresswoman Debbie Mucarsel-Powell, an immigrant from Ecuador.
We are sending a mixed message when you're voting against a resolution that is clearly standing against hate. I can't speak for any of them that voted against it, but I do worry that it continues to exacerbate the problem that we have coming from this White House and this president, which is to use hateful words against people like myself.
Several members, particularly Democrats, being asked today why they didn't do maybe a dual resolution that would include anti-Semitism and all of the other things that they feathered into this one. It would be helpful to talk with one of those 23 Republicans who voted against it. So let me bring in Texas Congressman Louis Gohmert, who sits on the House Judiciary Committee and is one of those who said no to this measure. Why did you vote against it?
Well, as I said on the floor yesterday, we needed to take on the anti-Semitism that was clearly expressed, a bigotry, a hatred that needed to be addressed, needed to be called out. And you have the Speaker even saying that this wasn't about Congresswoman Omar. We didn't address it. We just generally said, basically we were against hate, except maybe not the kind of hate of a Democrat that hated Republicans and tried to kill a number of them, shot Steve Scalise, and or the violence against Trump supporters. But even as horrible as the shooting of Steve Scalise, there is no moral equivalence to any of those things called out in this resolution yesterday, or even things that weren't named. No moral equivalence to the Holocaust. 6 million people killed because they were part of a race, part of the children of Israel between 1933 and 1945. When people have said never again, they meant never again. But this doesn't, yesterday, that didn't mean never again. It means we're starting this process all over again.
Let me ask it a different way. If it had not been for Representative Omar's comments, would you have been talking about anti-Semitism on Capitol Hill? And from the examples that you gave, many other things that perhaps need to be spoken about that are outside the realm of this.
Well, I'm sure we would have been, because the anti-Semitic feelings are there. They're being expressed, whether it was by her or someone else. But it is critical, whether you're a Bonhoeffer or anybody else, when you hear anti-Jewish remarks being made, and I'm not talking about criticism of somebody who just happens to be Jewish. I'm talking about slandering an entire race of people. then, it's got to be called out. That's how the Holocaust began. Eventually, people quit calling it out, and then that led to more and more jumping on the bandwagon, and before you knew it, there were 6 million people killed. We just can't let that happen again.
And in terms of religion, because that's what we're talking about with the Jewish faith here, not a race of people. But, Democrats and Republicans are seeing this so differently. And it's getting kind of chippy in terms of what's being said. Representative Debbie Mucarsel-Powell had this to say, criticizing Republicans. All right, we'll move on. She had said, and we showed you a little bit of what she said earlier, criticizing those of you who went against this. My colleague Bill Himmer asked this earlier. I'm asking it too. Why not do 2 resolutions? Did anybody talk about that? You could have done one anti-Semitism and then put in all these other things that Democrats said that they wanted to put in.
We would have been fine with that. But as we were told, no, we're still working on the resolution. So they kept having different iterations of the same resolution, adding more and more. They didn't want to call out anti-Semitism directly. They wanted to blend it in so they wouldn't offend anybody. And then the end result was that it offended people who are very concerned about another Holocaust coming about someday. So, Harris, you're right. That would have been a good idea. It would have been far better. And if that had been what we did, then I could have voted for a resolution generally decrying hate. But we needed one directly calling out the anti-Semitic comments.
All right, Representative Gomer from the great state of Texas, I appreciate getting your perspective on it. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for your good questions.
Of course. New fallout over former Trump attorney Michael Cohen's Capitol Hill testimony. Now President Trump is tweeting that Cohen directly asked him for a pardon, contradicting what Cohen has told lawmakers. But Cohen, in a tweet, denies it. Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge is live in Washington. So, Catherine, we all watched it. There's evidence of one way or the other.
Well, that's right, Harris. The president went further on Twitter this morning, saying Cohen directly asked him for a pardon and was denied. He addressed this pardon issue with reporters a short time ago.
I know it's a stone-cold lie, and he's lied about a lot of things, but when he lied about the pardon, that was really a lie. And he knew all about pardons. His lawyers said that they went to my lawyers and asked for pardons. And I could go a step above that, but I won't go do it now.
House Republicans are drawing attention to this key section of Cohen's testimony, alleging he may have perjured himself again.
My testimony certainly does not diminish the pain that I have caused my family and my friends. Nothing can do that. And I have never asked for, nor would I accept, a pardon from President Trump.
Fox News was first to report that Democratic staff from the House Intelligence Committee traveled to New York 4 times and met with Cohen for more than 10 hours in advance of that 7-hour public testimony. 2 sources also told Fox News the sessions were wide-ranging, covering the National Enquirer's catch-and-kill policy, American Media CEO David Pecker, as well as alleged undervaluing of President Trump's assets. What's key here, Harris, is that one by one, Democrats raised the exact same topics during Cohen's public testimony. Listen here.
I was involved in several of these catch-and-kill episodes, but these catch-and-kill scenarios existed between David Pecker and Mr. Trump long before I started working for him in 2007.
To your knowledge, did the president ever provide inflated assets to an insurance company?
Yes.
In a statement to Fox News, a spokesman for Chairman Schiff said, quote, despite this professed outrage by Republicans, it's appropriate to conduct proffer sessions and allow witnesses to review their